to another episode of Between You and Me. Today, we're looking a little disheveled, the bed, me, myself, all of it. And I am looking the way I am, and the setting is giving what it is because my cat's sleeping at the edge of the bed, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make my bed because his happiness is more important than my own. So that's why we look the way that we do. But aside from that, welcome back to another episode. Today we are delving into yet again more relationship-centered subjects, and I'm actually really excited to talk about this, which yes, I'm always excited to talk about the shit that I'm planning on talking about. And that's because I've been inspired lately. I feel like I've seen and been talking about this subject a little bit lately, and it makes me want to put my 2 cents out there a little bit, just because it is so prevalent in the dating world, and that is romanticizing something and kind of being obsessed with this idea of this on and off person, a toxic cycle, a toxic relationship. And it may or may not be because of Love Island, which if I could make a whole episode literally just talking about Love Island and everything that happened and is happening thus far, I would. I don't know who would be too interested in doing that or in hearing that, but me personally, I would definitely enjoy talking about it. But point being, I feel like that's such a common theme in dating. And then obviously a common theme that we see in reality shows like Love Island, for example. Spoiler alert, I'm talking about Love Island US. I have yet to watch the UK version. Huda, Jeremiah. It's so giving you're craving that toxic push and pull. You're romanticizing this person based off of a really quick spark that you might have had. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. I want to talk initially about what romanticizing looks like, and I might pull some examples from Love Island, but also I feel like by the time this episode goes out, the season's really going to be coming to a close, and it might not be as relevant or interesting to you guys. So I'll try not to talk about that too much, but the idea of romanticizing someone in a relationship, I think, is making something or someone look better, look more appealing, and look more attractive. And that goes for personality and characteristics as a whole than he, she actually is. And I think what's romanticized the most in relationships, more than someone just saying oh my God, yeah, he's so kind, he's so this, he's so that, when really all he's ever done to you is smile and hold your hand when you cross the road. But things like really deep chaos and really deep arguments, big egos, jealousy in relationships, anything that kind of gives off that toxic energy, that I feel like can be really mistaken and misconstrued, and people take it as passion or intensity, deep love, adoration, when in some cases it can represent a deep feeling for another person, but it doesn't always mean that it's that positive passion or love that you're craving and wanting. I think for the most part, this generation tends to get a little confused with what real attraction and love and good chemistry is, and mistakes it for, like I said, certain things that happen that are negative, but because they give you such high impact feelings and emotions, you associate the whole intensity with the relationship, making it seem a lot more special than it really is, which is where that romanticizing element comes from. So because of this, because our generation and I don't know, maybe generations before were like this too, but because we have adopted this idea of like glamorizing toxic behavior and romanticizing qualities that are basically the bare minimum, I guess you could say, a lot of people end up tolerating really nasty shit in relationships, being hurt, being betrayed, being, having your boundaries crossed. And we're not holding up this level of like self-respect that I think most people try to teach. Your parents try and teach you, other people in relationships try and teach you, but until you're the person sitting in that seat and experiencing it, you don't realize how hard it is to let go of something that has this deep intensity and that you have romanticized for such a long time. I feel like we jumped into this episode with so much information, and now I'm just like backtracking and making sure that I'm like touching on everything and that everything makes sense just in such a short period of time. But romanticizing goes obviously hand in hand with negative behaviors, because romanticizing things that are positive is never a bad thing. If anything, you don't have to romanticize it because it does have that natural light to it, has that natural like energy that you don't have to force. So if you're sitting there and you're in a relationship and you're trying to come up with reasons for why behavior has happened, if you're kind of pushing things under the rug or excusing things that naturally you wouldn't ever excuse, then you might be romanticizing a person or a relationship based off of things that aren't necessarily true. So yes, the gist of that is that we tolerate bad behavior, being hurt, having negative experiences in a relationship because we're romanticizing things. And in my opinion, in my experience, and in what I've seen happen with other people, I think that this can happen the most in your first relationship or your first really serious talking phase, let's say, because a lot of the times these situations don't lead to relationships because they're that rocky and they're that, unstable. They're traditionally situationships, but, sometimes they get into relationships. And I think that happens the most when you are in your first whatever. One, because you haven't had a lot of relationship experience. You haven't had a lot of things to compare it to and other experiences to be like, okay, like this is what a loving relationship felt like, or this is what a negative relationship felt like. So you get to kind of compare and contrast and be like, okay, I don't want this, but I do want these like characteristics or these positive things. And also a big one that I feel like I've heard so many times and I have actually experienced myself is the idea of the one. We stick with that person. We go through so much hurt and romanticize this person because we have kind of like locked in this idea that like, oh yeah, this is my person. Like this is forever. This is the one. This is the only person that I'm ever going to feel this type of emotion with. This is the only person that I'm ever going to have this deep of a connection with. What if we were meant to be? What if da 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 da? And that thought process, being stuck on that, can really keep you with a person for a very long time, even though they're hurting you, because you don't think that you'll ever get to experience that type of connection with another person because you haven't yet. When you're in that relationship where you feel like that connection's super strong and the love that you have is so intense and it doesn't have like a calm feeling, but you're more focused on the thought of losing that like love or connection, I think that's when you know that there's some toxicity mixed up in that, formula. Because there's a level of like stability and peace that comes in when you have a relationship that you're not romanticizing, you're not over romanticizing, and you're not neglecting the negative parts of it and ignoring and looking past them. When you're in that emotional roller coaster relationship, there's so many highs and there's so many lows that you feel this type of obsession. That's the word. There's an obsession with this person. And there's a lot of fear surrounding that type of relationship, which I think is why there's this coping mechanism that we come up with in our minds where we romanticize this relationship and we think that all of this negativity and fear of losing the person is actually positive. And it's like, okay, no, good. Like, I really love this person that much that I'm so afraid of losing them. Or I really love this person that much that we argue so much because we love each other and we want to work through our problems and we want to, get to the bottom of it. Like, no one else has this type of relationship, how connected we are, how intensely we feel about each other. And that really comes down to the roller coaster of it all. If you are feeling such low lows, such deep arguments, such, painful situations with a person, you're no doubt going to feel that intensity, that like crave for connection, that feeling of like wanting to be so close to a person and afraid of like being away from them because you are afraid of that relationship ending. You are afraid of the issues that you have with that person coming between you guys. There is so much conflict and there is so much emotion that you're gonna have that like feeling of like, I don't know how to describe it, but you're gonna be up there and be like, oh my God, I'm like so happy that we're good now. I'm so happy that we're happy in this moment. Whereas if you're in a much more stable relationship, and yes, you might argue, you might have your problems, you might have your differences, you might get into bigger arguments, but they don't last very long, or they don't cause you to feel so low about yourself or about your relationship. You kind of just have a dull moment. Your emotions are bound to be, affected in a healthy relationship too. I don't want to make it out to seem like, okay, you can't have a fluctuation in your emotions when you're with a good person or when you're in a healthy relationship. But I think there's a big difference in the feelings that you have after arguments and feeling like you have this like balance in your heart and you're not afraid that arguments that you've had, you're going to lose this person, or situations that you've been in, like you're fearful of what's to come in the future. And you also don't really experience that intense, like, oh my God, I need this person. Like I need that, like very erratic, up and down, scary emotions that really doesn't happen very much when you're in a relationship where you feel like, okay, I'm safe, like I'm not making excuses for this person. I'm not covering up rude, negative things that they've done to me. I'm not acting out of my character towards them and being, disrespectful and creating problems with them and then having these huge blow-ups and terrible experiences. So there is a level of peace. Do you know what I mean? The roller coaster is like a flowing river, I guess. Your highs are not super high and your lows are not super low. But that's not to say you're not going to have crazy highs now and then. They're just not going to be as frequent and as fluctuating as a relationship that is toxic as one that is hurting you a lot and one that you are trying to romanticize. So now the problem with all of this, the problem with the romanticizing and the toxicity and the, painting things out to look better than they actually are, is obviously that you're getting hurt. And whether or not this is the first relationship or the 15th that you keep doing this, it is inevitably a pattern if it doesn't stop, if you don't choose to stop it. So what I feel like helps in this scenario is getting rid of the source of toxicity, because I feel like sometimes there is one. I've seen patterns in friends, mutuals, people that I know, where they tend to be drawn to that toxic energy and that like characteristic in a person. And I genuinely believe that when you come out of a relationship, you need to take the time to reflect on the qualities that you actually didn't like and that you were making yourself feel like you were okay with in that moment because you were idolizing this relationship and you were romanticizing it. Because when you have a good idea of what it is that you didn't like, you're able to put that up as an expectation in a future relationship or a boundary that you want to put in a future relationship, so that you're not put in the same position to be making excuses or forcing yourself to like something about a person and make your relationship seem better than it actually is for you to accept it, Okay, so this doesn't answer the problem of if you're currently in that relationship, but hopefully listening to this, you'll get an idea. If you are feeling like you really relate to what I'm saying, you're in that up and down roller coaster of an emotional type of relationship, and you do have things like really intense jealousy, a big ego in the relationship, whether it's yourself or your partner, and just overall toxicity, like not really listening to your guys' emotions, like a very overly emotional state at all times. You never feel like there's a even balance between you guys, yet you still continue to stay together. You continue to argue. You continue to push through it all. You're inevitably, I genuinely feel like you're going to suffer in the long run, because you guys might have the stamina for it now. You might be young. You might be able to argue every single day because it's summer break and you got time to be on your phone, calling each other, yelling at each other every single day. You might have that stamina now, but eventually that stamina runs out. It's not a situation that has longevity. It's not a relationship that has longevity. I think so many people stay in this type of toxic relationship again because they're so consumed with the idea that this is the only person you'll ever get to feel that type of emotion with. It's not true. It's definitely not true. You have the opportunity to fall in love and to have this connection as many times as you freaking want. Genuinely, you really do. And if you think about how many years you have in your life, if that person is not right for you, if you guys are in a crazy cycle of back and forth of toxicity, and the only thing you're doing in that relationship is making excuses, making it look better to people, your friends, your family, if you're constantly trying to find reasons that they are acting the way that they are and excusing their behavior, then you're in a situation where you might be romanticizing a person that hurts you. You might be covering up situations that are just not right. And the best way to see that for what it is to step out of it and then look backwards and be like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely seeing what was not working. I'm definitely seeing what they were doing that was harming the relationship. And honestly, 8 out of 10 times, you take part in the toxicity and you continue the back and forth, negativity in that relationship too. So it's a lot easier to make excuses for someone when you're also making excuses for yourself. You're much more susceptible to accepting people that aren't the best when you don't feel yourself like you're at that level to deserve a really good, peaceful type of love. When you do feel like you deserve a lot, you're able to find someone who matches that energy. And it's not always going to be a perfect 100 from either side, but it's going to be like a good balance of, okay, they're teaching you things, you're learning from them, they're learning from you. You're obviously still going to have your flaws, but there's going to be this element of balance and peace. I also think that a big piece of this, which I completely forgot to touch on, is the idea of wanting to fix someone. Why is that such a big one? I genuinely feel like it's a trope almost that like women are so into the idea of like, I want to fix him. I want to teach him. I want to show him what it's like to like really be loved. And honestly, it comes out of a place of genuineness and like happiness and good emotion, but it's not necessarily a very good thing. It's not a good thing to find someone that you see as a project and that you want to like alter or change or form into something else. I think there's a fine line between knowing that like you can teach this person certain things and they can teach you certain things versus seeing yourself as this like much better human being overall and seeing another person as kind of like a baby that you can raise and that you can like morph into the person that you want them to be, because that's honestly never gonna work. And if it does, you're not gonna have a true partner, you're gonna have a follower, and that's like no fun. Genuinely. What the hell? What's the point of that? Find someone who's at a similar level to you in terms of their healing, in terms of their self-awareness, in terms of their emotional awareness, so that you are able to learn and grow with each other together. Because that's really the point of it all, you know? Like sometimes, you know, we're a little older in relationships, we're a little wiser, and two people meet and they're both pretty healed and pretty happy. And those are probably really great relationships, like really easy, which is why sometimes I swear people are like, oh yeah, we never argue, we're in a great relationship, we're very this, very that, like I knew from the moment I met her she was the one, which is not always the case. Okay, you don't always have to feel like that in relationships. Like I feel like some people don't think about it at the beginning. So what was my point? Oh yeah, you don't need to find someone who needs to be the one, but you should find someone who matches you and who has a level of like understanding and healing energy as you do. So why you might not have let go of this relationship yet. 1, the feeling of the one. This is something that you need to break down in your mind. From everything that I've said in this episode, understand that there is no one. You might have one, but that doesn't mean it's the only one. It's just the one that you chose. Ooh, kind of crazy. I don't believe that there's just one person for someone. There's too many people in this world, and there's too many connections that you make on a day-to-day with people. Like imagine the type of love and like deep feelings that you have just for your friends, let alone a partner, right? And chances are people are going to be in like 2 to 3 solid relationships in their life before they settle down and choose someone to be with them for their whole entire lives. So it's never that one person that is somewhere there and appears in thin air, and when you find them, if you lose them, you're never going to find it again. It's the idea of you might have multiple people who come in and give you this beautiful feeling and give you this type of intensity and love and connection and chemistry, but that might end, and then you might get to experience it again, and you might get to experience it again until you choose the one. You choose the one that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. That, you know, whatever your idea of a successful relationship is, whether that's marriage, whether that's, you know, staying with them forever and ever and ever, like you choose who the one is going to be. That isn't chosen for you. 2, I think people don't let go because they're in this negative pattern of continuously experiencing the same thing over and over and over again, and they're choosing familiar over something that is different and something that doesn't quite feel the same. It doesn't give them the same off the bat emotions. Let's say you're constantly like going with people who are very intense. Okay, this is when I will bring up the Love Island lore, but I feel like Huda was giving this energy of she wanted someone to be immediately obsessed with her, and then she reciprocated those feelings right back. And that gives me the impression that like there was a lot of holes in her heart that she was trying to fit at a certain point in her life. And she was taking whoever gave her the best first impression, whoever gave her the most energy off the bat, whoever essentially was just as good at love bombing as herself. So she followed the same pattern, and I haven't seen what's going on now in her connections, but I have a feeling that she just wants that. That's like her standard that she has for her relationships at the moment. So you could be following a similar negative pattern and then eventually ending up in situations where you're always having to make excuses or romanticize a relationship where someone hurts you, because you're never getting the person that's there to actually treat you right, because you're not actually taking the time to find out more about the person when you get to know them, rather than only caring about them filling that void and caring about them being super obsessed with you or super overly enthusiastic about getting to know you off the bat, which sometimes isn't natural, right? Talking about this specific example, not everyone's going to be kissing your toes the first date and telling you that how obsessed they are with you and that they want to be the baby daddy of your child, you know? So it's like, okay, you need to have a realistic expectation on relationships and love. And then you also need to break down the negative pattern and kind of question why it is that you even feel that way to begin with, that you need a person to be fulfilling that idea of being obsessed and being super overly indulgent on you without really knowing you yet. Lastly, but not leastly, why you can't let go: rose-colored glasses, romanticizing. Looking at a person and ignoring all of their negative qualities and only focusing on their positive ones. And usually that is because you feel like there is such a deep, deep, deep connection that you will never be able to fulfill in any other situation. So when you strip away the rose-colored glasses, when you strip away these feelings that come with it and look at the facts and don't think with just an emotional based mind, but think with a logic based mind, you will start to see why you are in relationships, or you are in a relationship that you are constantly being hurt in, because you're gonna look at the facts, and you're not gonna look at the happy emotions that you feel after every single argument that you get into. So I hope that gave a little bit of insight to people and helped people reflect a little bit on maybe where they're at in their own relationship, and if there is things that need to be worked on, or that you need to step away from a relationship. Because mind you, you could be in a relationship where you're being hurt, but there are situations that you're covering up and you're not, really delving into with your partner, because you want it to look like this picture perfect, pretty relationship, when in fact it's not. And the only way to get through difficult times and to get through arguments and situations that happen in your relationship is to work through it. So if you're not actively doing that and you're consistently getting hurt, yet you're in this daydream of like, okay, no, but I'm obsessed with this person and I love them, again, doesn't have a lot of longevity. So I'm saving yourself the future pain and the future issues. If you're listening to this, if you're in this situation, you're probably a little bit aware of it too. So I hope this was somewhat interesting and or helpful for you guys. But I do feel like I jumbled up my thoughts a lot, and normally I do feel like that. So what a podcaster I am, huh? Okay, guys, I love you. Don't forget, as per usual, at Between You and Me podcast on Instagram, follow it. If I ever have any Q&A sessions, it will all be through there, or questionsbetweenyouandme@gmail.com, where you can send me any of your longer questions. You can watch this episode at Between You and Me pod on YouTube, or continue to listen to it here. Don't forget to rate the podcast 5 stars. I love you guys. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.